I'm Kennedy O'Brien, and this is Conversations with Kennedy. And this week, I'm sitting with Mayor John McCormick of Woodbridge. I am his guest in his studio, where he does his weekly podcast. And he was gracious enough to ask me to join him. And we were talking about pilots, payments in lieu of taxes, which in New Jersey, the way that our tax system works, and particularly our property tax, is very critical and very important for each municipality, as a way for each municipality to make investments. As in Sayreville, it's in roads, sidewalks, recreation fields, things for the Board of Education, a possible community center. And the mayor has 50 pilot projects going. He is a proponent of it, and he is someone who shares his experience and his successes, and whatever few and occasional non-successes there are. He's a man who's confident in what he does and where he is the mayor. And he shares all that, and I'm fortunate to be his friend and his colleague. And Mayor McCormick, I thank you for your candor and your openness and your willingness to share. As I've said, we're the same in that it's always people before party, and we're here to get it done for the people who entrusted their town to each of us.
So we're here today to talk about payments in lieu of taxes, a very difficult topic for a lot of people to understand. Kenny and I have been best friends for a long time. So he, upon becoming the mayor again, reached out to talk with me about pilots and how we implement them in Woodbridge, what's our history, what has been the good, the bad points about them. So let me start by asking you to fill me in on what your plans are in Sayreville, and do you have pilots? Are you looking for new pilots? What is it you want to accomplish today and learn about payments in lieu of taxes?
Well, first of all, Mayor, I want to thank you for your time and for sharing your experience and your knowledge. Just so everybody knows, Mayor McCormick and I are believers in it's people before party. And when Hurricane Sandy came, Sayreville took tremendous destruction. And Mayor McCormick was the first person that called me up and said, Mayor, how can I help? And I said, I needed men and machines, and he was the first and just responded instantly. And I can say he is a man where people always come before party, and he has all my respect and admiration.
Thank you. I wish I could have seen. I wish I could have seen the trail of orange Woodbridge garbage trucks crossing the bridge. That would have been something to fill and have a couple of pictures. It would have been something,
but more importantly, what they did, they helped remove 2 million pounds of storm destruction in the first 2 weeks. Without you, we would have been in big trouble. So, on behalf of the 45,000 people of Sayreville, I thank you.
Always happy to help.
As Mayor McCormick said, we're friends, we get along, we believe in the same things. We're just different parties. So one of us is Protestant, one of us is Catholic, and but
we're both Irish.
We all believe in the same thing. That being said, I'm very interested in the success that the mayor has had with his pilot programs. We have had several in Sayreville, but this time in 2024, Sayreville has been discovered. We have a great deal of privately owned property, some large tracts. As some people know, we have one of the largest redevelopment sites happening, and it's been ongoing for a good 20 years. And hopefully there will be a shovel in the ground in the next several months. I'd like to, at this point, cordially invite you to be a part of that.
That's the one with Bass Pro Shops combined with?
Correct.
Who's the other one? The two major franchises combined into one. That's the main tenant in that, main retail
Bass Pro
tenant.
is part of Cabela's.
Cabela's, that's what I was thinking of. Right, okay.
And they're a destination
right,
store. It's going to be one of the largest, outside of the corporate headquarters store. This may be the second largest in the country.
That's a great catch for, no pun intended, for the Bass shop.
The only thing I can think of as a better store for men is to throw in the Home Depot tool aisle, and a wife could drop off her husband there and come back in 2 weeks, and he wouldn't have missed a beat. So between fishing, camping, hunting, and tools, he'll be in heaven.
Good luck with that.
Yes, I expect you to come and have a beer there.
Absolutely.
So, but that being said, I'm very interested in what you have done in Woodbridge with your pilots, a bit of how they work, but more importantly, what they do for the residents of Woodbridge.
Okay, let me start with the history then. Back in 1999, I was the town chief financial officer, and we had an opportunity on a big piece of vacant land in Caseby on the waterfront to land what was then RPS out of Pittsburgh. It later became FedEx. I think FedEx bought RPS. So we wanted to get this warehouse, a very large warehouse project. They were looking anywhere east of the Mississippi, literally the whole eastern United States. And we had several competitors up and down the turnpike. So we were looking for anything we could possibly do. I didn't know pilots back then, but the attorney for RPS, then FedEx, worked with me and explained them to me. And I realized that that's a pretty good idea for the township, because what we do is give a slight discount on what taxes would have been, on the theory that the developer in this case had a large environmental cleanup. That was a very contaminated site. So it was hard to imagine somebody paying a high price for the site, a high price to clean the site, and a high price to develop the site. I mean, I'm a CPA by trade. The numbers most of the time don't work. So the one thing we can do to help make them work is give them a little break on their taxes. So typically, a pilot in Woodbridge is 30 years. For 10 years, they pay 85% of what they would have paid in taxes. For 10 years, they pay 90% of what they would have paid, and then for 10 years, 95%. So when they run their numbers, and they have to get financing and debt investors and equity investors and banks and mortgage companies and everybody, it turns what pencils out to be not profitable or mildly profitable into more profitable. So they're able to finance, they're able to get money.
It's a good investment.
It works. Now you'd say, well, we're taking less taxes. Really, no, because typical tax bill, you know this, most of it goes to the school board.
Yes.
Then the biggest chunk usually is the town. Then the county gets a chunk, and I don't know about you, but we have independent fire districts that get a chunk. And so we get 28% of a typical tax bill right now. The way a pilot works is 95% of that money goes to the town, 5% goes to the county. But the 95% doesn't come in as municipal taxes. It comes in as a pilot payment, which means it's exempt from the limit that you can raise taxes by. So all that money comes in as a separate revenue on the town, and there's no limit on how much it can grow. This year we have $26 million in our budget for pilots. Last year was 22, the year before was 17, next year it'll be 30. All that money comes directly to us, and we can do anything we want with it. There's no limit to how much it can grow.
Question for you, if I may, Mayor.
Sure.
How does it affect the school revenue?
There you go. So the school districts mistakenly think that because we get that money 100%, they get less. That is absolutely, positively untrue. The school district every year casts its budget. They figure out what they need to spend. They figure out what they have as revenues. The balance becomes what they call the amount to be raised by taxation. They get that. They do that calculation. They send us the A4F form. We bill it, we collect it, and we pay them. They get 100% of their taxes, regardless what happens to the assessed value in town. Pilots don't go into the assessed valuation for taxes because they don't pay property taxes that way. So whatever happens to the base doesn't impact the revenue they need, and they get that revenue. The only thing that changes is the rate. So, and I know this is complicated, so if it was all regular taxes, the rate would be lower, but the revenue they collect wouldn't change. They should have no real concern about what the base is. Sure. They need 20 million for their budget to balance it with taxes, they get 20 million.
Correct.
I could do 500 warehouses with pilots, and they still get that 20 million.
This is the other thing that I'd like you to weigh in on. In your opinion, based on your many decades of experience both at state and local government, what would happen if you did not grant the pilot?
Well, you wouldn't get the project probably, because usually the pilot's the difference between getting a warehouse, getting a power plant, getting a downtown apartment complex. Usually the difference between getting it and not getting it is the numbers, and that becomes the pilot, because we're competing against Elizabeth and Newark and anybody up and down the turnpike down in Cranberry and Monroe. We're competing against anybody on Route 80. We're competing with other states. A lot of times I would say, for the power plant, for example, our very first power plant, there were 20 bidders in the state to host that power plant. The person who was interested in the land in Woodbridge came in. We worked out a financial deal that was great for us and great for them, and they got the deal. They were one of the 3 that were picked. I think the reason they got it is because of our tax deal.
Okay.
So, but what we do though, and this is key, we compensate the board even though we don't have to. And the way we do that is we let them borrow money for projects. New school. They built a brand new Ross Street school. They upgraded Woodbridge Middle School. They have giant additions on School 25 in Ford, School 28 in Avenel. They're building a brand new School 4 and 5 in Avenel. Right now we're working on another school in Hope Lawn. They borrow money, but we pay the debt service. Mm-hmm. And that's good too, because that is exempt from the cap on expenses. So debt service is always exempt. So we can bring in all the money we want from pilots. In our minds, we generally give about 25% of it to the board by paying their debt, and we use the rest for roads and sewers and parks and buildings. This year was kind of probably a little bit more, but we let them do all those. They would never be able to do those projects. When we went out for referenda for the 2 major ones, we did 57 million in 2017, 87 million in 2020. We're doing another one in 2024. We advertised to the people of Woodbridge, vote for these because it's not going to cost you tax money.
Right.
Warehouses are paying it, power plants are paying it.
Speaking of attracting businesses, one of the things that I've found is that New Jersey is no longer the manufacturing state that it once was. In our youth, it was pretty much all manufacturing.
Right, my father worked in a Westinghouse steel plant.
And they have since moved away either to other parts of the country or offshore. But what is a business, the new business of New Jersey, is distribution. That's why you have such an eagerness for people to put up warehouses. Mm-hmm. Have you found that to be a problem for Woodbridge?
No, simply because they're going up in places they should go up in, and they're not going up anywhere near neighborhoods. And that's what's great. We've had a lot of brownfields, especially the Casby waterfront that's been developed. There's spaces in Avenel and Warehouse Parks. There's all these places where we've done them, have been in non-threatening areas. And warehouses are great. They don't cost us anything in our budget.
Correct.
I mean, there's no, you send a cop every now and then if there's an issue.
Right.
Somebody locked their keys in their car. You literally send a health inspector once a year. You send a building inspector once in a while. There's no real cost to the town budget. They don't put kids in school.
How are they as employers for people who live in Woodbridge?
It's hard to tell, but they employ a lot of people. I mean, a lot of people. They wind up asking us to help them get bus stops because they want to get their people, to the spots. I can't say that I know how many are from Woodbridge, but our numbers seem to be pretty good in terms of employment.
Okay. What I found is I have very few people contacting me for space for manufacturing, and whether it's light assembly, it's chemical, it's something, you just don't get it anymore. In Sayreville, the 3 big factories were Hercules, DuPont, and National Lead. National Lead obviously is the new $2.5 billion redevelopment on the water. Hercules is now becoming warehouses. But there's nobody that's going to come in to employ thousands of people. I've asked DuPont if they would come back, and they said they're not coming back to New Jersey. It's not a good business decision. But warehousing is, I think, primarily because of Elizabeth, the port in Elizabeth, the port in Bayonne.
The port is key. We're on the fringe of what they call the port district.
Yeah. What I'm looking to do in Sayreville is I'm looking to mitigate traffic, which I can see being a 100-year project, because we're now at the crossroads. My understanding is population is moving south of the Raritan River, but the jobs are north of the Raritan River. So we become the bottleneck, the east-west bottleneck and the north-south bottleneck. We're working on that. We're working on getting a new east-west road put in. But more than that, I see a great need for roads and sidewalks. As you know, as a mayor, that is a huge capital expense, and it continually needs to be done. Unfortunately, it had become a political checkerboard, and it as a result, very little got done. But what I would like to do with some of this pilot money is I have streets in my town that haven't been done in 30 or 40 years. And they need to be done, and the curbs need to be done, and the sidewalks need to be done, and to accelerate the plan to get the roads done. The second thing that I find, there's a lot of young families moving into Sayreville, and they have children, and they would like first-class recreational fields for their kids. And if you do a turf field, it's $2 million. And I can see the pilots paying for that. So you're paying your regular tax, but we have revenue coming in that would provide for both streets, curbs, and sidewalks, and for new recreation opportunities. Am I off?
You're right, and that's what you've got to sell, because you'll have people coming out to council meetings when you're doing the pilots. You'll have people all over social media saying you're hurting the kids, you're hurting the schools, which you're not. I forgot to mention, the very first things we did before the referendum effort started is we put about 14 million into fields. We did 9 turf fields, we did gym floors, we did cricket fields, tennis courts, tracks. You're allowed to pay for improvements on school property if they're community oriented. You can't pay for a boiler, you can't pay for a roof. You can't pay for a gym floor, you can, because your kids use it for rec. You can do fields, so we put a whole lot of money. That was the very first thing we did. Our fields were terrible. They were mud bowls and dust bowls. They were just,
I'm familiar with
one
that.
by one we fixed them up, and now they're beautiful. We're the envy of every town around us because we have literally 9 turf fields. So if you're doing it for that, that is very, very smart.
One other thing that there's great want, but there's no way to pay for it, is a community center, which is all purpose, both recreation. Is this something a pilot would pay for?
We did ours way back in 1999. We had a separate vendor coming in to build a recreation center. They went bankrupt. We turned it into a community center. And yes, that was something because the first pilot we did was 1999. So we knew what we had coming in from revenues. We never really paired it as that in the very beginning. But in my mind, knowing the numbers of the town, I knew it was really coming in to pay for this community center. That community center for us is absolutely unbelievable.
Well used?
Oh my gosh, all the time. We were there today swearing in new officers and giving out Officer of the Year and Officer of the Quarter. Your project in National Lead can pay for a community center.
Correct.
There's no doubt it can. But what you got to do is just keep educate the public. The one thing you didn't mention, though, and you got to take credit for this, is Hercules, DuPont, and National Lead. You cleaned up 3 of the worst sites around. Your town is better off now because those sites are clean. Mayor. And that's all you.
Mayor.
Go ahead.
We're Irish, which means we're humble.
I'm not talking about myself. I'm talking about you, man. Okay. You did a great job with that. They were awful, toxic, highly contaminated sites.
Yep.
Probably worse than anything we had. We had a bad one at the CPV site, the old PC Chemical, and I forget the other name of the company, badly contaminated. You had your share of those too, and they're gone.
Thank you. But we are humble people.
But seriously, tour our community center. We'll show you financials. We'll show you what we make.
Thank you.
We're happy to take you. We got a town coming. Linden's coming this week, I think.
Okay.
Next week, I should say. They're coming to look at ours. It'd be phenomenal. You get the right spot, close to the center of town, and you really should. I know you have issues with the Board of Ed, but you got to make them friends. And if I can help you do that, I will. But our board, I talk to our superintendent twice a week. We're working on a referendum now for a brand new school in Hope Lawn. We are hand in glove. We talk to each other. We meet with each other.
Not to show the town's dirty laundry. The superintendent has chosen not to talk to me for
That's-
eight
that's-
or 10 years.
That's got it.
And it's not for lack of reaching out. All that being said, that's over here, and it will take the turn that it will take.
But the money you're going to make, you need to
Well, this
involve
may-
him.
This may be an
He
incentive.
can be a partner. He can help you sell
I have
the
a-
pilots
I
if he
have-
knows it doesn't hurt him,
I
and in
have-
fact, it benefits him.
Mayor, I have asked that he meet with me.
Well, with who? With me?
With me.
Oh, you? All right. I'd be happy to talk to him and
no.
tell him what he's missing.
Sometimes a guy's got to get out of the chair.
All right. All right. Well, I'll leave that up to you.
So-
I'm fortunate that I have the relationship I have, and I wish you did too.
This is the way I work. It really doesn't matter to me if somebody likes Kennedy O'Brien or not. It doesn't.
I agree.
What matters
Not
to
you.
me,
I mean for me. I don't
Yeah,
mean for
I
you.
would assume it's the same. What matters to me is how they treat the mayor of Sayreville, because that's how they treat the 45,000 people. And I take umbrage for the disrespect he shows to 45,000 people. Kennedy O'Brien could care less.
Gotcha.
So
Well, he should know you won 6 elections, and you could win 6 more if you want. So what the heck does it make any sense to not be your
PhD
friend?
does not necessarily
All right, well.
mean anything.
Whatever.
Okay. All right. So that's a family fight, which will, in time, should resolve itself if there's a willingness. The willingness is on the borough side. I just, as I've said publicly, I'm not getting involved in foolish business decisions.
No, I get it. But
So-
your job is to involve the people to see the benefit of what you're going to do with the
Correct.
pilots, and
Correct.
if you do that right,
Uh,
you'll have no trouble. But
well-
you have to understand it. That's the key.
Correct.
We have never had a single Board of Ed person come to a council meeting to talk about pilots. None. We have the typical political opponents that talk about it,
Right.
and they think something's wrong, and they stir up trouble like they always do with issues
Right.
that aren't issues. You got that too. But when people understand, all I got to do is look at Woodbridge. If we pass one this year, we'll have over $200 million in referenda. You have to say, you can't say referendums. I always used to, but I realize it's referenda is the plural. When you do $200 million and it goes right to the school system to do things they couldn't pass on their own, how does that's great. Everybody wins. A community is known by the school it keeps. Your schools are new, your schools are good, they're fixed up, the fields are good, the buildings are good, you win.
Right. The first thing that I've explained to people over the years, the first thing that usually goes in any municipal budget, any county budget, any state budget is maintenance.
Capital.
Yeah, it's the first thing that gets cut. And then it's hard to raise taxes again to backfill. You're better off not cutting in the first place, but what's better doesn't always happen. So there's a backfill for basically the state, the county, and the municipal maintenance projects.
Right.
And we need to do that. We need to get caught up, and we need to move forward.
And the pilots give you that extra money
Correct.
you need outside of the revenue limits, and you can
Right.
borrow $20 million and spend $3 million a year to pay it back.
Correct.
And you can do your roads, you can do your sewers, you can do your drainage and your storm and sanitary sewers and parks. You can do all that.
Yeah.
You can have a Grand Slam home run, not just a home run.
Well, things are popping in Sayreville for the good, and I'm excited about it.
What other pilots do you have? What other projects do you have going on besides National Ed?
Besides National Ed, there are some warehouses, mostly warehouses, I'd say. We have a handful of warehouses that would like to come in. We have some more on top of that. As far as residential, we have a little bit some COA obligations. Personally, in Sayreville, I probably, in my 6 terms, I've probably knocked on every door. And I've met every person that's lived in Sayreville. And what I found was there were quite a, well, 8,000 out of our 45 are seniors, which I am, on fixed income. And what they have told me is that they're kind of real estate rich and cash poor. And Sayreville has very, very reasonable taxes. That being said, they said, you know, we would like a Rossmore from Monroe in Sayreville. That is impossible because it's a horizontal development. You need hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of acres with not a lot of units on it. What is possible is if I did something for 55 and older, and it was more vertical, 4 stories, 5 stories, in a nice setting, market rate, where people could sell their homes, and in this real estate market, they would do quite well, and they could remain in Sayreville. It's where their life has been, probably where a number of their children and grandchildren
grandkids,
are,
yep.
their churches, their parishes, and life would be good. We'd bring in new generations of people while taking care of our senior generation.
We're in the same wavelength. We're trying to do the same thing now in a couple different places, but nobody really wants to build market rate senior. They'd like to build luxury apartments. Market rate senior is still less than real market rate that they could get, so it's difficult. We just have a project where you approved a little while ago where we combine some senior with medical component, memory loss component, and assisted living component, and where somebody can go from the senior units until they're needing of some services. They can move in the same complex to a different place, and then when they get a little older and they can do less for themselves, they go somewhere else. Those kind of things are really attractive, and they can be multi-floor, and they can cover a lot of ground.
Well, before I got into elected office, I was a commissioner on the Housing Authority, and then I was the chairman. And I remember at the time, which was in the 90s, we did we paid for a great many surveys, tests, to determine the exact need. So I sit with you with the concept, and I can explain the need based on the amount of doors I've knocked on. As we parse it to which is better, income restricted, you know, when I have, well, it's all relative. I have a unit that was built as the last act of the Carter administration, and basically people pay a third of whatever it is they get in retirement. That being said, though, I think, no, it's $38,000 is the maximum that they can earn in a year. I have another senior income restricted, and that's like $60,000, which is a fair amount of money.
It all depends.
Yeah.
The hardest thing is dealing with somebody who we have 6 senior buildings that are run by the Housing Authority and 4 privately. The hardest thing is getting somebody who makes too little or too much, because you can't help them. You just can't help them.
Right, right. They're in the middle. There's a lot more stuff for us to
Go ahead.
To
No one's slowing us down.
No. But going forward, I'll be knocking on your door if that's all right.
I don't mind.
Bringing my people to meet with your people, and
well, half your people are here.
Well, they're here for today.
No, I mean, look, we have. I'll brag a bit. We have the best police force in the state. I mean, we're nationally accredited every 3 years. Today, we just swore in 7 new officers. It would have been 8, but one guy's deployed. We swore him in advance. We gave out the Officer of the Year, the Officer of the Last Quarter, and Heroic Life-Saving Awards. I would put our Public Works Department against anybody around, and you saw it during Sandy when we emptied out all the garbage from Weber Avenue and all the neighboring streets down there. And our health department, you probably have the county, we have our own. We like that, control our own fate. Our rec department, we have thousands of kids playing sports. So I think if I was any other mayor, I'd want to not talk to me. I would want to talk to my directors, have your directors talk to our directors and see how it is that they do it, because they're great. Best workforce in the state here.
You've done a fine job.
Well, so have you, my friend. Anybody who gets elected 6 times, which both of us have, we must be doing something right.
Well, it's the heritage.
Yeah.
We're both Americans.
Yeah, both Americans, Irish Americans. Well, thank you, sir. Do you want anything else you want to talk about?
No, I think this covers the topic for the moment. If again, you've always had an open door policy. You've been a great leader in the county, and I've enjoyed our friendship and our working together.
Likewise,
because,
and even
again, it's people before party.
And even when we both worked in the state, way back in the 90s, we still always had a good respect for each other,
Always.
And there's nothing wrong with that.
That's how you get it done.
If everybody got along like us, Trenton wouldn't be so screwed up, and Washington wouldn't be so screwed up.
This is the highest I'm going. I've
Me
said
too.
people,
Me too.
I've been mayor 6 terms now. I can tell you it's not a stepping stone.
Me neither, but it's the best job I've ever had.
Me too. Me
Thank
too.
you, sir.
All right, Mayor.
All right, pal.
My pleasure.
You got it.